Welcome to Concept Craft. We are presenting step-by-step videos training to crack your certification exam, so you can gain the confidence to take on any accounting challenge. Now let's begin our today's lesson. Enhanced options for migrating clients from QuickBooks Desktop. Learning outcomes. In this lesson, we'll cover enhanced options for migrating clients from QuickBooks Desktop. Topics: the new standalone conversion tool, exporting only specific data to QuickBooks Online, setup checklist for QuickBooks Online, additional items that convert from QuickBooks Desktop to QuickBooks Online, converting bank rules. In this era of cloud-based integrated technology solutions, more and more clients are moving from QuickBooks Desktop to QuickBooks Online, which means more and more pro advisors are converting company files. If you aren't familiar with what's involved in migrating QuickBooks Desktop files to QuickBooks Online, we recommend visiting our training on the subject, particularly the overview of the QuickBooks Desktop conversion tool. In this lesson, we'll cover the following enhancements to the QuickBooks Desktop conversion experience. The new standalone online conversion tool, the ability to select what data to export to QuickBooks Online, the new QuickBooks Online setup checklist, the inclusion of more data and features in the list of items that convert, the new standalone conversion tool. One significant development that can help you migrate QuickBooks Desktop files to QuickBooks Online is the new standalone online conversion tool. This cloud-based tool allows you to carry out conversions even if you don't have QuickBooks Desktop installed. It migrates the client's QuickBooks Desktop data to QuickBooks Online in a similar way to the built-in conversion tool. However, it's important to note that if you don't have access to QuickBooks Desktop, you won't be able to check the integrity of the company file before conversion or carry out the other pre-conversion activities that help ensure the conversion goes smoothly and accurately. You'll also need to ask the client to provide the company reports you'll need for the post-conversion comparisons, and you may need to do more post-conversion activities than you would when using the built-in conversion tool. How do you use the online conversion tool? To run the tool, open the link for the appropriate QuickBooks Desktop subscription. QuickBooks Desktop Pro or Premier, QuickBooks Desktop Enterprise. When you open the link in a browser, select Get Started and follow the instructions. The whole conversion process only takes a few minutes. You can then carry out the post-conversion tasks in QuickBooks Online as you would when converting a company file using QuickBooks Desktop's built-in conversion tool. Check out this article on how to move your books to QuickBooks Online with the online tool. Exporting only specific data to QuickBooks Online. Regardless of which conversion tool you use, you can now choose whether to export all the company data or just specific items. When you reach the review stage of the conversion process, you now get the options shown below. Selecting Export All Your Company Data transfers everything that can be converted to QuickBooks Online. However, if you select Export Specific Data, you can choose to carry out a partial migration, which involves exporting either all lists and balances. This option allows you to transfer the client's chart of accounts, company lists, including customers, vendors, and products and services, plus their account balances as of the conversion date, or only lists. Choose this option if you only want to transfer specific company lists, which can include the chart of accounts. Select the headings to explore what's involved with each of these options. Export all lists and balances. Export only lists. Export all lists and balances. If you export all lists and balances, the client's chart of accounts, plus their company lists, such as customers, vendors, and product and service items, will migrate to QuickBooks Online. The client's account ending balances will also copy over, dated as of the conversion date. When you convert the file, QuickBooks Online creates multiple journal entries to enter the opening balances. What should you check in QuickBooks Desktop before converting the file? If there are any post-dated transactions, such as pre-authorized payments, these will be included in the associated account balance. So you need to delete any post-dated transactions before converting the file. First, you'll want a report of post-dated transactions in QuickBooks Desktop. Do this by running a journal report, which you'll find in the Accountant and Taxes section of the Report Center, as shown here. Customize the report to cover a period starting from the day after the conversion date to a date in the far future. This will capture the details of all potential post-dated transactions. Save or print the report so you can refer to it later. You might decide to enter the post-dated transactions in QuickBooks Online using their correct future dates. Once you've run the report, you can delete all the post-dated transactions from QuickBooks Desktop. You can then continue to convert the file to QuickBooks Online. What should you do in QuickBooks Online afterward? You should verify that the account balances in QuickBooks Online are correct. To do this, carry out the following checks. Open the chart of accounts and check the figures in the QuickBooks balance column. Run a balance sheet as of the conversion date in both QuickBooks Desktop and QuickBooks Online and check that they match. If not, you may have missed one or more post-dated transactions, so you'll need to recheck QuickBooks Desktop, find and delete the transactions, then reconvert the file. You'll also want to run the open invoices and unpaid bills reports and compare them to their counterparts in QuickBooks Desktop to ensure the relevant balances are correct. There will be 2 journal entries for each customer/vendor, one to record all the payments, and the other to record all the invoices/bills. If the customer/vendor has a 0 balance, you should apply the 2 journal entries against each other by creating either a new received payment or a new paid bills transaction, as appropriate. If you want to check the journal entries that QuickBooks Online created to enter the opening balances, you can run a journal report. Set the reporting period to all dates, and use the grid gear icon to add columns for customer and vendor. Export only lists. You may want to export only the client's lists if they're starting a new company but will continue to provide/procure the same products and services from the same customers/vendors as they do now. In this case, the client won't need to migrate all their other company data into QuickBooks Online. You can also carry out a lists-only conversion if there's too much garbage in the QuickBooks Desktop file to perform a complete migration, in which case you'll need to create the rest of the QuickBooks Online company manually. When you select the Only Lists option, you can use the drop-down to select which lists you want to export. You can select either all lists or choose specific ones from the following options. Chart of accounts. Customers. Vendors. Employees. Items. Note that if you select all lists, the conversion tool will also export other lists that aren't included in the drop-down. For example, payment methods, payment terms, customer types, classes. If the client uses a list in QuickBooks Desktop that also exists in QuickBooks Online, that list will be converted. Setup checklist for QuickBooks Online. Another enhancement to the QuickBooks Desktop conversion experience is a setup checklist that guides you, or the client, if they carried out the conversion, through some key steps for completing the transition to QuickBooks Online. This is presented by default when you first open QuickBooks Online once the migration is complete. You can return to it any time by selecting Dashboard from the left-hand navigation, followed by Get Things Done. What can you use the checklist for? The checklist walks you/the client through a series of setup activities, including reviewing the company data to ensure everything migrated correctly, adding users and assigning the appropriate roles and permissions to them. You can learn how to do this in the lesson on adding and managing users. Setting up and configuring features and tools so that the client can do things the way they did in QuickBooks Desktop. These settings cover features such as reports, expenses, and sales. Working through and completing each activity in the checklist will help you/the client set up the QuickBooks Online company, ready to start using it. Note that you may also need to carry out other, more in-depth, setup/post-conversion tasks, as covered in the validating the integrity of a QuickBooks Online file and configuring a QuickBooks Online file after conversion lessons. Additional items that convert from QuickBooks Desktop to QuickBooks Online. One of the ongoing enhancements to the QuickBooks Desktop migration process is to include more features and transaction types in the data that converts. Note that these additional items will only convert to QuickBooks Online when you convert all the company data. They won't be included if you choose to export only lists, or lists and balances. If the client is using payroll in QuickBooks Desktop and signs up for QuickBooks Online Payroll, the following data now converts automatically to QuickBooks Online. Employer bank account information, including the bank account number and the routing transit number for the account from which payroll is being paid. Employee bank account information, specifically their direct deposit information, bank account numbers and routing transit numbers. Employees can split their paycheck between 2 accounts. This data will be transferred without any action from you or the client if they're carrying out the conversion. The features listed below will also convert to QuickBooks Online. What converts from QuickBooks Desktop? What does it convert to in QuickBooks Online? Bank rules. Bank rules. Customized versions of the top 20 memorized reports. Custom reports. To ensure these features migrate and are set up correctly, you or the client may need to do some pre- and post-conversion work. Let's look at this now, starting with bank rules. Converting bank rules. One feature in QuickBooks Desktop that now converts to QuickBooks Online is bank rules. Bank rules work on similar principles in both QuickBooks Online and QuickBooks Desktop. In each case, a rule looks for transactions that meet certain conditions and then carries out one or more specified actions on those transactions. You can explore how bank rules work in QuickBooks Online in the lessons on creating bank rules and using bank rules. However, there are some differences between how rules can be set up in QuickBooks Online compared to QuickBooks Desktop. These differences can affect how rules convert from one product to the other, so you may need to carry out a few checks before and after converting a company file. Select the headings to explore the differences in how bank rules work, and what this means for you when carrying out conversions. What are the differences? What should you do before converting? What should you do afterward? What are the differences? QuickBooks Desktop has 3 bank feed modes: Classic, Default, Advanced, and Express, and there are a few differences in how bank rules can be set up in each mode. However, many clients use Classic mode, so we'll focus on converting bank rules created in this mode. In Classic mode, 2 key variations between how rules can be set up in QuickBooks Online compared to QuickBooks Desktop are that you can have different limits on the number of conditions, options for rule conditions. These are explained below. Different limits on the number of conditions. In QuickBooks Desktop, a bank rule can have up to 10 conditions. As you can see here, each condition can only be set up to apply to the transaction description. We'll look at the impact of this later in the lesson. However, QuickBooks Online supports up to 5 conditions per rule instead. What does this mean when you convert a company file? Only the first 5 conditions of a bank rule in QuickBooks Desktop will be migrated to QuickBooks Online. Different options for rule conditions. As you saw earlier, bank rules in QuickBooks Desktop can only be set up to apply to the transaction description. On the other hand, they can have starts with and or ends with conditions, which aren't available in QuickBooks Online. What does this mean when you convert a company file? All converted bank rules will be set up in QuickBooks Online with description pre-selected from the first drop-down of each condition. Any rules in QuickBooks Desktop that have starts with / ends with conditions will be set up with the contains condition instead. What should you do before converting? You should review any bank rules in QuickBooks Desktop before converting the file to QuickBooks Online. Check the rule conditions as follows. If any rules have more than 5 conditions, edit them to reduce the number of conditions to 5 or fewer, or delete them from the list of rules. If any rules use starts with and or ends with conditions, make sure they'll work as required with the contains condition in QuickBooks Online. If not, either edit or delete them. You should also review any auto-generated rules and delete any that won't work correctly in QuickBooks Online, and or that the client is no longer using. Although this task isn't related to the differences between how rules work in the 2 products, it's worth cleaning up bank rules before converting the company file, as the file could contain hundreds of auto-generated rules. What are auto-generated rules? QuickBooks Desktop can be configured to create rules automatically when adding transactions from bank feeds. If the client has this preference switched on, QuickBooks Desktop may have generated bank rules automatically, and added them to the rules list as _auto-generated rule ###. How do you delete rules from the rules list in QuickBooks Desktop? You can delete an individual bank rule by selecting Delete Rule from the Action column. You can also delete multiple rules by selecting the checkboxes for the ones to delete, then selecting Delete Selected from the Manage Rules drop-down at the bottom of the Rules List panel. What should you do afterward? Once the conversion is complete, you should review the list of bank rules in QuickBooks Online. You'll find the rules list in the Banking Center, as shown below. Do the following. Check that all the rules you left in the QuickBooks Desktop list have been converted and are set up as required. Edit any rules to update their settings, such as the rules conditions and the bank accounts to which it applies. Recreate any rules that the client still wants but that you deleted from QuickBooks Desktop because they wouldn't convert correctly. Converting memorized reports. Let's look at another QuickBooks Desktop feature that now converts to QuickBooks Online. In QuickBooks Desktop, clients can create and save customized versions of the majority of available memorized reports. Any customized versions of the top 20 memorized reports the client has saved now migrate to QuickBooks Online when you convert the file. The top 20 memorized reports in QuickBooks Desktop are: Balance Sheet, Balance Sheet Previous Year Comparison, Journal Entries, Check Detail, Deposit Detail, Profit and Loss, Profit and Loss Detail, Profit and Loss Previous Year Comparison, Profit and Loss by Class, Profit and Loss by Job, Account Quick Report, A/R Aging Summary, Custom Transaction Detail, General Ledger, Open Invoices, Sales by Customer Summary, Transaction Detail by Account, Transactions by Account, Trial Balance, Unpaid Bills Detail. You'll need to review these reports in QuickBooks Desktop before converting the file, then check that they have been set up correctly in QuickBooks Online afterward. Note: only customized versions of the top 20 memorized reports will convert. Any customized versions of memorized reports not in the top 20 list that the client saved, and/or any additional memorized reports they created, won't convert, so you'll need to recreate them as customized reports in QuickBooks Online. Select the questions to explore which memorized reports convert to QuickBooks Online, and what you should check before and after the conversion. How do you find memorized reports in QuickBooks Desktop? Select Reports from the top menu bar, then select Memorized Reports followed by Memorized Report List. The resulting list will vary depending on which reports the client is using and how they've configured them. What do you need to do in QuickBooks Desktop before converting the file? Review any customized reports in the Memorized Report List and delete ones that aren't being used, or that the client no longer wants or needs. How do you know which reports have been customized by the client? This is where it can be tricky. Ideally, the client will have saved copies of their customized versions and given them unique names. Even better, the client may have created a new group and added their customized reports to it, as shown here. However, if the client hasn't renamed their customized versions, you might be unable to identify them from the list. You'll need to get this information from the client when you identify which customized reports they want to keep when migrating to QuickBooks Online. You should also delete any reports that QuickBooks Desktop added to the memorized report list, even though the client didn't customize them. For example, you may find standard reports such as check detail, profit and loss, or open invoices, as shown above. QuickBooks Online already includes these reports by default, so if you don't delete them from the memorized report list before converting the company file, you'll create duplicates in QuickBooks Online, which might be confusing for the client. What should you do in QuickBooks Online once the conversion is complete? Once the conversion is complete, you should check QuickBooks Online to make sure any customized versions of the top 20 memorized reports have been migrated and set up correctly. You'll find them in the Custom Reports tab of the Reports Center. In the example below, the customized report the client renamed and added to the My Reports group in QuickBooks Desktop has been saved with My Reports in the title. Remember that you'll need to recreate any customized versions of memorized reports that aren't in the top 20 list. Pro Advisor Tip: to ensure that the client's data was transferred correctly, you should compare some key reports in QuickBooks Online and in QuickBooks Desktop to make sure they match. Find out more in the lesson on validating the integrity of a QuickBooks Online company. Summing up. Learning outcomes. Well done. In this lesson, we covered enhanced options for migrating clients from QuickBooks Desktop. Knowledge recap. The new standalone conversion tool means that you can now migrate company files without needing QuickBooks Desktop installed. Whichever tool you use, you can now migrate additional items such as bank rules and memorized reports. Once the conversion is complete, a new setup checklist guides you through some key actions to get QuickBooks Online ready for the client. Next steps. This is the last lessons in this subject. Navigate back to the module overview to pick your next lesson.